My motive. The thing, I'm a volunteer at this point. There's nothing I want to buy personally that I can't buy, and I don't really like yachts or anything like that. So my interest is really from an environmental standpoint, to some degree from a national security standpoint, and then longer term from an overall economic situation standpoint, which is if you've got a non-renewable fuel, you better find a renewable source or the economy's going to collapse down the road. My interest is like, what can we do to get as many renewable energy cars on the road as possible?
I think very often people overweight what enjoyment money can bring. Like buying lots of things is not necessarily the thing that leads to happiness. And certainly being incrementally wealthy does not make one incrementally happy. At least for me, it's more like, what am I doing that's useful? Are my efforts making the world a little bit better? That kind of thing. I like to build things. I like to construct and to evaluate my efforts based on what things have I helped to build that people have enjoyed. That's really the main thing.
Well, I think I'm going to stay on electric cars and rockets for a while, it was actually never my intent to run Tesla. Because running two companies is quite a burden, actually. It's sometimes I run into people who think, oh, if you're CEO of the company, then they sort of imagine themselves, if they were CEO of the company, they would grant themselves lots of vacation and do lots of fun things. And it's like, that doesn't quite work that way. What you actually get is a distillation of the worst things going on in the company. It's like
it's really kind of like a relevance optimization. It's what do I think is going to make the biggest difference to the future of humanity, and then I try to see if I can have the value of the output be greater than the cost of the input, which is necessary for any ongoing enterprise. But it's definitely not from the perspective of this is the best return on investment or anything like that. If one were to rank order return on investment and the amount of effort required, I think space and cars would be really low on the list. It is extraordinarily difficult to make an economic return on a space endeavor, or I think on a car company. It's certainly possible, and thus far, actually, it has turned out to be a good economic return, but at great difficulty. And if I'd done, say, another internet company, the return would have been easy relative to the return that it would have yielded. So it's just from the standpoint of, am I working on things that I think will have the biggest impact on the future, and then economics. Making the economics work is necessary, just because if you don't make the economics work, then you're not going to have an impact on the future. I've actually never been all that big on the exit. Both for my first company, Zip2, which basically made internet software that helped the media companies come online, and PayPal. I was the least interested in selling, but the rest of the board was, so I kind of went along with that. But I have no plans to sort of sell Tesla or SolarCity or SpaceX. In fact, I think it's very important, particularly that SpaceX not be sold, because then it would lose the philosophical goals that I have in mind. Tesla is public, so in theory, somebody could attempt a hostile takeover of Tesla, although it would be tricky, because I own about a third of the company, so I'd have to be doing something really stupid in order to, for somebody to do a hostile takeover. So from just doing moderately stupid things, I think they wouldn't be able to take it over. And then SpaceX, I think we'll probably take SpaceX public, but even going public, I'll probably still have a majority share of SpaceX. So going public would be, give us access to low-cost capital, but I wouldn't lose control of the company. And I think with Tesla, it's possible at some point in the future, certainly not in the short to medium term, but at some point in the future, it may make sense, or shareholders may wish to sell Tesla. But I would only agree to such a sale if I felt that the fundamental good that Tesla can achieve had largely been achieved. And that fundamental good is the acceleration to sustainable transport. And that's, if one looks back at Tesla and says, well, what's the best outcome I could hope for Tesla? The best outcome I could hope is that the presence of Tesla accelerated the transition to electric cars by 5 to 10 years. And the reason it's important to have that acceleration is that we have a tragedy, the commons problem in the production of CO2, where we're sort of consuming some CO2 capacity of the oceans and atmosphere, but we're not paying for that at the gas pump. And so you have to bridge that issue with innovation, and that's the fundamental goal of Tesla and Solar City.
The idea of taking on something more is very frightening. But I mean, possibly at some point in the future, certainly not the near term, there are. I think there's an opportunity to create an electric jet, essentially. And I do think one could create an electric jet that is really exciting, something that would be supersonic, vertical takeoff and landing, pure electric, and just a big leap forward. I think that's a distinct. I'm quite confident it's doable, provided that there's a rough doubling of the energy density in batteries or capacitors. So, basically around the 500 watt-hours per kilogram level is where it starts to make sense. And then there's, I do think there's the possibility of kind of a fifth mode of transport, which I've talked about, kind of mentioned tangentially. I'd like to sort of publish something about that maybe in the next month or two, once Tesla's at steady state production. And I want to flesh it out a little bit so that and pre-address some of the rebuttals that people will come up with, rather than just sort of put it out there and then have the rebuttal occur and have an unaddressed rebuttal. But I guess the way to think of it is it's like a cross between a Concorde and a railgun.